Hello, Coleman229 here, another Topic of the Week video. Last week I compared Jyn Erso and Rey as characters, and this time I'm going to be comparing their movies. This week's topic was submitted by Andrew89, and her topic is why Rogue One is a better movie than The Force Awakens. Both movies are dark and sad at parts, especially in the final act. But what in this new Disney canon did Rogue One understand that The Force Awakens didn't? What about the way it handled its characters? Both new characters and the old characters from the original. What about the leads? For instance, the dynamic between the trios, Finn-Poe-Rey versus Cassian, K2, and Jyn. Alrighty, so let's talk about the tone. So the tone, like both of these movies have a lot of dark parts to it. Rogue One really has some dark parts. And The Force Awakens, despite some people, I saw people describe this as like really family friendly. I'm like, no. I kind of found it more disturbing than the other movies. Like, yeah, you know, in A New Hope, the original Star Wars movie, Alderaan gets blown up. Okay, yeah, Obi-Wan dies, and the Empire strikes back. The Empire wins. Han is captured, and then Luke is, you know, goes off, and he's basically heavily injured after not completing his training. And then in Return of the Jedi, you know, you ultimately get them winning. Just, you know, after fighting a hard fight at the end. And then in the prequels, you know, obviously there was dark stuff in that. You had Anakin being a slave. You had, you know, people dying all over the place. You know, you had Anakin seeing his mother die in his arms and then committing genocide right after that in Attack of the Clones. And then you have the whole, you know, Order 66 in Revenge of the Sith. So yeah, darkness, like Star Wars is no, you know, stranger to dark stories. And that's something that I really like about it, is that it doesn't shy away from this. Rogue One especially doesn't shy away from this at all. But it bothers me more in The Force Awakens because, well, it also really comes down to a lot of what they chose to do and the tonal issues. The Force Awakens really wants to make a lot of jokes and then also do really dark stuff. And this is where you see problems in, like, some MCU movies where they want to crack one-liners but then also have a really dark story at the same time, and it doesn't really work. Like, Infinity War suffers from this in droves. Hey, look, we're committing mass murder of all of your favorite characters, but hey, Thor dropped a funny line. Yeah. Now, granted, The Force Awakens isn't as bad as this, but The Last Jedi gets pretty bad. So these problems weren't new in The Last Jedi. They were in The Force Awakens. They just weren't as in extremes because Rian Johnson is just that bad. But you do have a lot of these issues where it doesn't really know if it wants to be super dark and serious or if it wants to be jokey, haha, funny. You can have humor in dark movies. Rogue One does this. I mean, you have it's just a handful of just funny lines or just funny moments when you see those guys who wanted to pick fights with Luke in the Mos Eisley Cantina bumping into Rey. Not bumping into Rey, bumping into Jyn. And then you have several lines from Chirrut. He has some funny moments, like especially when he's you know, fighting the stormtroopers and he hits the guy in the foot and he's like, "Is your foot okay?" Or especially one of the funniest moment in the entire movie is when they put a bag over his head and he's like, "Are you kidding me? I'm blind," which is arguably one of the funniest lines in any Star Wars movie. But it doesn't overdo it with humor, and it's fairly consistent in tone, except for these more, you know, these moments of levity that you really need in a dark movie like this. But with The Force Awakens, sometimes it felt so weird because the movie didn't really know what it was, outside of being a rehash of A New Hope, but significantly worse. I mean, you would have these moments where Han Solo comes in and he sees the Millennium Falcon for the first time in years, and he's explaining to these new kids, you know, about the Force. And you also have, within a few minutes, the tentacle monster attacking. Yeah, great practical effects, JJ. And then it's weird, this goofy scene where Finn is strung up by this tentacle monster and it's just running over the ship. And then Rey has to save him, and it's like, what was the point of this? Oh, but don't... Oh, yeah, but this is also the same movie that makes all these wacky, weird things that also kills off Han Solo. Yeah, and I'm sorry, but that's a massive no-no. You don't just kill off Han Solo. And no, yeah, this is a big thing. This is when I talk about, you know, what they choose to do that's Stark. Killing off Han Solo? Bad idea. You don't just do stuff like that. Especially in such a lousy, stupid way as it did happen. Oh yeah, by the way, we adapted Jason Solo, but made him even worse. How do you do that? You take one of a character from the EU that a lot of people don't like, and you make him even more badly written and unlikable. Kylo Ren is awful. Ben, I hate the fact that they call him Ben Solo. It's stupid. It's Ben Skywalker. If you're gonna make him Jason, just call him Jason, okay? Don't steal Ben Skywalker's name. But yeah, he stabs Han Solo and throws him off of a bridge. Wonderful. Oh yeah, and also the fact that The Force Awakens just wipes away all of the other movies by doing a full universe reset. It feels like, you know, you had all these like toys set up by George Lucas, and he's like, alright, so he's carefully putting all this together in this big diorama, and then, you know, The Force Awakens comes in and it just swipes all the toys off and goes, oh no, these are my toys, this is mine. That's what it feels like. And, you know, it kills off the entirety of the New Republic somehow in one fell swoop, not only killing billions, if not trillions of people, but also basically going, yeah, you're basically fighting the Empire again. There's no... all the victory, all the fighting, all the sacrificing, the death across the movies, and especially at the end of Return of the Jedi, that big celebration, all of it's meaningless. That, to me, is worse than any character death in and of itself, even Han Solo's. But yeah, Han Solo's character, oh yeah, his character is... all of his character development wiped away. Leia's character development, gone. Luke's character development, also gone, but if you were hoping that there'd just be a sliver of hope that he would be fixed in Episode 8, no, it makes it 20 times worse. So yeah, in terms of the old characters get treated like garbage. They're nothing. You can tell that Disney in Lucasfilm, they don't care. JJ, Rian Johnson, Kathleen Kennedy, they don't care. It's all about that good paycheck. And that's all they care about. Well, that and pushing politics. Because, you know, that's what Star Wars always was, right, guys? A place to push politics. I hate Kathleen Kennedy so much. But with Rogue One, with with its darkness, yes, the entire main cast dies. All of the team of Rogue One die. But it's meaningful. It means something, and this is the a unique position that, you know, prequels have, is that they can be dark while leading into a more lighter story, or a story that's more optimistic. You know that the Death Star is going to be destroyed, and with leading right into A New Hope, it makes you really want to watch A New Hope. But all the sacrifice when, you know, when Chirrut, when Boz, when K2, when Bodhi, when Jin and Cassian, they all die during the Battle of Scarif. And plenty of rebels die too during the fight. They all die for the shot at getting the Death Star plans in the hands of the rebellion. And it succeeds. And we see them giving the plans to Leia to set up, you know, Episode 4. And we know that these deaths aren't in vain. I mean, granted, technically, they are kind of in vain because of The Force Awakens, which your movie shouldn't be conflicting like that. You shouldn't be ruining your own movies. But I guess that's just what the sequel trilogy is doing. But with Rogue One, if you don't count the sequel trilogy, you just go episodes 1 through 6 and then Rogue One, you have a story of people basically overcoming any of their individual issues with their pasts and stuff and whatever, coming together and sacrificing themselves to make sure that the galaxy is saved. With Jin's story, with Cassian, mixing with Cassian's story, and K2 and Baz and Chirrut and Bodhi. You have all these people working together, you know, to make the ultimate sacrifice for the greater good. And what Cassian wanted to do with the greater good, you know, he'd done a lot of horrible things, and this is the one time he actually fought for the greater good that cost him his life, but was genuinely doing something that would directly help the rebellion win the war. And you know, when you see these deaths, I consider those deaths genuinely sad. I don't like a lot of character deaths. Most times it's handled really badly. But this was something that actually made me feel emotional when I watch it. And it gets me every single time when I watch Rogue One, because I know these deaths mean something. I like all these characters. I like Jyn. I like K2. I like Cassian. I like Bodhi. I like Chirrut, and I like Baz. I like these characters, and seeing them die is sad. But I know the reason that it's sad and not infuriating is because these deaths mean something. They directly contributed to Luke eventually blowing up the Death Star. And that's the real hope that the movie has. It understands the concept of hope far better than The Force Awakens ever did. Far better than any of the sequel movies do. Because it genuinely inspires hope. You know, despite the casualties, it's hopeful. You know, and even though it does kill off its characters, and frankly, pretty much every major character dies in this. I mean, Saw Gerrera dies, Galen Erso dies, Jin's mother dies, Krennic dies. Pretty much all these major characters die in this movie. But it treats them with respect. They have their own characters. Jyn has her own character arc of growing. I talked about this with the last video, but she has her whole character arc of growing and growing from a selfish person who's only concerned about her own survival. She couldn't care if the Empire was ruling as long as, you know, her in her own little bubble, it's, you know, it's okay. You know, growing into a selfless person who is willing to sacrifice herself in order to save the people that she didn't care about at the beginning of the movie, with all these other characters and their own character arcs. You know, and you have these changes from a lot of you have these, you know, characters who experience their own character arcs. Baz ends up going from jaded to showing that he does really care, and especially about Chirrut, in that, you know, you see him, you know, being jaded through the movie, but ultimately he's willing to fight alongside everyone else in the end. You see Bodhi going from a scared and, you know, and confused, you know, cargo pilot who didn't really know exactly what he was doing, to becoming a hero who was vital in getting the Death Star plans out. And you see what Cassian, you see K2, who ultimately ends up sacrificing himself, despite the fact that he's a robot. And he tries to make sure that Jyn and Cassian succeed. And then Cassian and Jyn fight to the end to get the Death Star plans out. And this all means something. These characters get their own stories, and I know, I understand, like, I want to learn more about these characters. I really do. I would love it if we got, like, comics about these characters before the movie. I mean, I would love more books about them, more stories. Finding out all the stuff with Jyn, all these missions that Cassian did. Finding out, you know, about the story of Chirrut and Baz. Finding out exactly how Bodhi met Galen Erso, and how all this stuff happened. But we don't need to know literally everything about these characters, because what we got was good enough for the movie. We know who these characters are, and you can talk about each of these characters and their motivations and their beliefs and what drives them and what their goals are. Well, you can't really do that with The Force Awakens, because these characters are all written in flat ways, especially old characters like Han Solo. What's Han Solo doing here? He's here for his cameo, and that's really about it. He doesn't really contribute much to the story. If you replaced him with any other old guy who showed up, it really wouldn't make that much of a difference. What about Leia? If you replace Leia with another general lady, really nothing would change. And that shouldn't happen for original trilogy characters. What about Akbar? Well, Akbar's just there in The Force Awakens. And even the new characters who you would think would get the focus. Poe gets the shaft bad. You know, Rey has flat, poorly written, and just kind of wanders around the whole story and doesn't really do anything important. Like, she does stuff that's important, but as a character, nothing drives her. She doesn't develop. Finn doesn't really have a character to build, so he doesn't really have his own story outside of running and trying to find Rey. The villains fare even worse because, yeah, you have Kylo Ren, Snoke, and General Hux and Captain Phasma. Snoke is barely in the movie. Hux is probably the best character out of the villains, but that's not saying much because he doesn't really do much outside of make a Nazi speech, and that's about it. Kylo Ren is awful. Oh my gosh. Literally, a character I thought would be really cool, a really cool villain, ended up being just pathetic. And then Captain Phasma. The less said about Captain Phasma, the better. Not like there's anything to really say about her. She's practically a non-character. But these characters are all, old and new, are treated like crap in The Force Awakens. In Rogue One, when they bring in characters from the past, it's basically just for what they're needed for. Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, Darth Vader, Tarkin. You know, you have these characters who are these major characters who are brought in, but for only a handful of scenes. Krennic is the main villain of the movie, but then you have Tarkin there, and it makes sense because Tarkin's in charge of the Death Star. So then you have Tarkin there for a few scenes. You have Darth Vader there for a few scenes, and a fantastic ending scene where he's mowing down the rebel soldiers trying to get the Death Star plans. You have Mon Mothma and Bail Organa with their actors from the prequels, it was really wonderful to see that. You have them coming in for just a few scenes. And it's not like they sit there and they spend half the movie just on screen talking just because, well, these are major characters. No. They understood that you don't just shove these characters in like you did with Han Solo in The Force Awakens. You need to be careful with these characters. You need to treat them with respect. And, you know, with Mon Mothma, with Bail, I loved their scenes. They had wonderful scenes. And with Darth Vader, there were some great scenes. Great, extremely memorable scenes. I'm sure that even a lot of people who may have felt meh about the Rogue One will probably remember the Darth Vader scene at the end of the movie. You just say that. The Rogue One Darth Vader scene, most everyone already knows what you're talking about. And then Tarkin, with the fantastic technology that they have that makes, you know, to recreate, you know, Tarkin, you know, he's only there for a little bit, but they make sure that he looks good. And even Leia's scene at the end of the movie, you can see, you know, it looks wonderful, even for the brief moments. And yeah, they don't shove Leia in there the whole time because, well, you know, you really can't. You can't just force all these characters in there for no reason except to, you know, have cameos to make people go, oh, I remember, and make them think of far better movies, like The Force Awakens did. But, you know, The Force Awakens was not respectful to any of its characters, where the Rogue One was. It cared about its characters, it gave each of these characters a purpose, new and old, and it didn't feel like it was wasting all of its characters, which is wonderful, to be honest. Now, for the leads overall and their dynamic. There's no trio in The Force Awakens. There's a trio in Rogue One. You have scenes with Jyn, Cassian, and K2. You have an actual trio there, because you have Jyn interacting with Cassian, Cassian interacting with K2, K2 interacting with Jyn, and all of them interacting with each other. And this is where trios really shine. And I think I talked about this in a previous video with Angel Rin. But this is one of the reasons why trios are such a great way to set up character dynamics, because you can do so much with just those three characters. With all of them interacting with each other, you can have so many different dynamics of just two of them. You know, you have three different pairs to deal with just two of the characters, and then all of them, you know, together, and then each of them individually. You can do so much with a trio, and there's a lot done with that in Rogue One. Now, of course, not as much because they only had one movie, but you had you had these interactions, and you had meaningful interactions between the characters. You had Jin and Cassian with particularly when they start echoing each other's lines, like when Jin starts quoting Cassian, and you show that he had an effect on her. When you have these interactions between K2 and Jin, where Jin takes a gun at the beginning, early on in the movie, and then K2's constantly suspicious of her, but at the end of the movie she gives K2 a gun to defend himself, and then he's shocked. And he's appreciative of her at the end, and he does end up sacrificing himself to help her and Cassian. Cassian and K2 have these hilarious moments, and you understand that these two have worked together, and they know each other. So you have these great dynamics going on that mean something and are memorable. You remember these interactions. I mean, I remember even small moments where Jin throws a bag into K2 and expects him to carry it, and then he's just like, drop. He's like, nope, I'm not going to deal with this. But with The Force Awakens, there's no trio. And that was so disappointing. They advertised the ding-dongs out of this new trio. It was going to be Rey, Finn, and Poe. They were going to be the new Han, Luke, and Leia. And no, Poe's barely in the movie. And then he came back in what felt like they just kind of wrote in Poe comes in the script and didn't make any changes after they were supposed to kill him off. Come on, if you're going to bring him back, bring him back. Don't just make a tiny detail change and go, oh, that's good enough. Especially when you don't even explain how we got off Jakku. Rey and Finn's interactions, I ended up not really liking. They're fine, they're friends, but it wasn't very interesting. Rey just kind of, Rey doesn't have much character anyway, so there's not really much for her to really bounce back outside of having some lines. And they have some nice scenes, but I'll really boil that down to John Boyega and Daisy Ridley working nice together more than anything in the script. But they don't really have any meaningful dynamics. They have lines where they try to say something meaningful, and it just it doesn't sell. I mean, and it doesn't really help that Finn's character is a total waste. I mean, seriously, you have a guy who's brainwashed with First Order propaganda after he was taken as a child and turned into a child soldier and then forced to be a stormtrooper. And his main character, character trait is he's got a crush on Rey. Like, it's like when they were coming up with all these cool ideas and they came up with Finn's idea, and then when JJ was writing the movie, he's like, I don't want to write that. Here, let me come up with Finn's character. Has a crush on Rey. Good, alright. Oh yeah, and wants to run away from the First Order. Alright, we're done. Let's take a lunch break. So with all the interesting stuff that they could have done with these characters, you have the best pilot on the Resistance, a former stormtrooper brainwashed with First Order propaganda, but wants to escape. He wants to get out. And then you have a scavenger on Jakku who obviously has something important about her. She has the Force. She has there's something important about her. All of them getting wrapped up in an adventure. That sounds so cool! And we don't get that. Really? Like that? We don't get it? We don't get anything with this? And ultimately, that's one of the biggest disappointments of The Force Awakens. I mean, there are a lot of things that are disappointing with The Force Awakens. It's a terrible movie. But one of the big disappointments was I was super excited for the new trio. I was super excited to see Rey, Finn, and Poe. But no. We were denied any interesting stuff. And it's so funny that Rogue One is an anthology movie. It's a side story. It's an interquel between 3 and 4. Episodes 3 and 4. And yet, it's the most true to Star Wars that Disney has been in the movies. And that's amazing, especially consider it's so stylistically different from, the main 6 movies. And like I'd said before in my last topic video, I will watch Rogue One. Like if I'm watching the entire, series, I'll watch 1, 2, 3, Rogue One, and then 4, 5, 6. Because it's just that good. It feels like it fits. And The Force Awakens doesn't feel like it fits. The characters really don't feel like they fit, which comes down to the bad writing, not the ideas inherently. You have so much of The Force Awakens seems to resent the previous movies to the point where it wants to wipe it away and be its own thing. But in that case, why are you Episode 7 in a, an entire massive saga of movies with a long-running continuation, and you want to what? Wipe out everything? What? Let the past die? Kill it if you have to? Really? I mean, no respect for Star Wars. No respect for what the previous movies were. Which, it's so funny. And you can tell the difference between J.J. Abrams and Gareth Edwards. Also the fact that they had solid writing for the movie and Gareth Edwards directing. Any changes they made in the reshoot were obviously good changes. Because the movie that we got with Rogue One, it was fantastic. And The Force Awakens is simply not. And, yeah, I mean, Rogue One is a better movie than The Force Awakens. It's a better movie overall. It's a better made movie, to be perfectly honest. It's, any of the flaws are just minor, to be perfectly honest. And The Force Awakens is just so cluttered with problems, bad writing, and completely missing the point of what Star Wars was. It's so superficial in everything it does with Star Wars. You got stormtroopers, you got X-Wings, you got a lightsaber, and they say the word Jedi. And that's about it. Rogue One has all the aesthetic trappings of Star Wars, and it also has the soul of Star Wars. And it's one of the few things that has come from the Disney era. And it's, of several mediums that I think unabashedly I consider canon in the Star Wars saga. And yeah, I think that's about it for this topic. So, if you want to submit a topic to me, you can comment below. And, send me whatever you want me to talk about. If you're on Tumblr, you can send me an ask and do topic : and whatever topic you want me to talk about. Just make sure to follow the rules I'll be posting down below. If you want to watch last week's topic video, you can check that out here. If you want to watch next week's topic video, you can check that out here when I get that done. So if you have any thoughts on Rogue One versus The Force Awakens, or if you have other things that you liked about Rogue One, please comment below. I really want to hear your thoughts. And thank you for watching.